Hello everyone. We'll be starting the webinar now. I request all the participants, please keep your microphones on mute at all times. I request the host to mute everyone. Namaste. I would like to welcome everyone to the webinar hosted by ni-msme on the topic Reassessing the Challenges and Opportunities of Retailing in Post-COVID-19. I would, I would request all the participants to keep their microphones on mute while a speaker is presenting to avoid unnecessary disturbance. The question and answer will be at the end of the webinar. To ask a question, please send the question along with the name of speaker to Jyoti Gupta privately on the chat. We have invited three experts and an in-house faculty member for today's webinar. So, without any further ado, we invite our first speaker, Mr. Abhay Gupta, founder and CEO of Luxury Connect and Luxury Connect Business School. Mr. Gupta has been acknowledged as the most influential retail professional and retail leader across Asia, GCC, and Africa for 2016, 2017, and 2018 by Asia Retail Congress. He is the author of the book The Incredible Indian Luxury Bazaar and is recognized as the Luxury Retail Icon of the Year 2012. Mr. Gupta has been involved in the evolution of the fashion and luxury segment in India, right from manufacturing, joint venture factory setup, and franchising in the country. Having been featured in Forbes Luxury Trend Report 2012 as one of the industry leaders, he has also been widely recognized as luxury expert. Sir, you may please proceed with your session now.
Well, good afternoon, delegates. Good afternoon, panelists. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity to address micro and small medium enterprises in India about retail. So, retail, as you all know, that for the past 2 months is going through several upheavals, several challenges. I would try to quickly take you through a paradigm shift which is likely to happen in the luxury, in the retail space. Pardon my language, luxury. I'm so used to the luxury space that I keep butting in luxury because I operate in that business. However, the retail remains common. There's only the treatment which is a little different. But let me quickly take you through certain challenges that the industry is facing. Firstly, let's look at the opportunity size that the Indian retail market was probably at the verge of achieving. So statistics show that as early as 2602 February, India's retail market, as per Boston Consulting Group, was to touch 1.1 to 1.3 trillion dollars by 2025. Mind you, just 5 years from now, we would have been at a retail size exceeding 1.1 trillion to 1.3 trillion dollars. However, is COVID slamming the brakes? That is what we are going to try to see now, and we're going to try to see what could be the solution. So, again, statistics on 6th of April show from a newspaper media that 6 months of losses can cross a figure of over $700 billion, and the recovery of these losses could take over a decade. In fact, yesterday or this morning, I was reading that the combined losses is over 9 lakh crores already in the Indian retail scenario. What has been the COVID impact? And during the COVID, how has the retail taken shape? So one broad thing that has happened is retail got broadly divided or more recognized as essential and non-essential retail. Not that it was not divided earlier, but it became prominent because the essential retail included things like your milk, your kirana stores, your local medicine stores, etc., etc. But here somehow the big baskets of the world could not come to our rescue, and it was our local kirana bazaar, a local grocer who came to our rescue. So he suddenly became the savior of the lots of people that were locked into their houses. This is just a small graph to tell you how non-essential retail globally took a dip of nearly 31% in the second phase of lockdown, and the essential retail took a positive rise of about 53% in the overall scenario. What happened to non-essential retail? We all know that we went through 4 lockdowns, and we are on the verge of fourth lockdown, which has come up with certain restrictions and certain giveaways as well. So we will examine that during the fourth phase of lockdown, what has been the scenario of non-essential retail. And when I say non-essential retail, I essentially try to cover mostly the brick and mortar retail. because e-commerce anyway we know that is a different ball game, and more retailers will have to sort of resort to that. So what are the challenges that we have faced in the fourth lockdown or the COVID era, I'm calling it, because in the previous three eras there was no retail happening whatsoever. So number one, shutdown of malls. All of us are quite aware of this shutdown of malls. Today the government is talking of perhaps opening the malls. The malls are making new SOPs in terms of hygiene, in terms of number of people allowed in terms of zoning, in terms of stores opening alternately, etc., etc. So new SOPs are being experimented with, but as of now, all the malls remain shut down, which is a major cause of concern for when it comes to the non-essential retail. However, the high street retail has been opened, but there are shorter operating hours, as we know. So some markets are opening from 10 to 6, some stores are opening 9 to 5, some stores are opening till 7. So there's a shorter, or let's say discriminated operating hours, which is also causing a lot of confusion. Next, in places like Delhi, we have odd even number stores opening on high streets, which is causing confusion. For example, if I go to the market in Karol Bagh in Delhi or any prominent market, and I buy one particular product from store A and another particular product from store B to complete my purchase, I go to the market and realize the store B is closed on that particular day. So this is causing a lot of confusion, not only for the retailers who are opening, but for the buyers as well. Next, there is social distancing norms to be strictly implemented. This means limited number of customers can be allowed inside. This again is causing challenges to the retailer as well as to the customer, because the waiting period for servicing is becoming increasingly high. Another challenge that the fashion business is facing is that there are no trial rooms allowed, or very limited trial rooms are being used. So the fashion business is resorting to maybe hygiene check, and the garments which are used for trying out are put away for a dry clean or sanitization and kept away for at least 24 hours. One or two trial rooms are only allowed to be used by customers. They are also not allowing customers to touch the product. You have to buy the product, only then you can try it out. So it is no longer taking 20 clothes to the trial room, trying out and buying just one. So you have to be very, very sure. This is again causing a lot of hardship when it comes to the customer as well as the retailer. So what is the new normal? How are people beginning to cope up? How are people planning to implement new SOPs? Number one, wear a mask. So this has become essential. Whether retail or no retail, the minute you step out of your house, you're supposed to wear a mask, which is causing a lot of new challenges in terms of breathing, in terms of asthmatic patients, in terms of, let's say, just normal irritant. But it is becoming a new normal. Next, we have to get our temperatures checked. The minute we get into enclosed space, we have to get to our temperatures checked. So even the offices, even the institutes, even cinema halls, even buildings, even retail stores will have to implement this norm in terms of getting the temperatures checked. So even in a colony market, if you go to a colony market today, you have to get your temperature checked before you are let in. If you get into a gated complex in Gurgaon where we stay, nobody can enter the complex without having his temperature checked in. Then in retail, we are only shopping by appointment. So it is no longer the liberty of casually walking around the market, hanging around and walking into a retail store just by window browsing. So you need to have proper appointment because limited number of people are allowed inside the store. This seems to be becoming the new normal, and many stores all over the world have already implemented this through apps. In my business, in the luxury business, already apps have been created, and you have to pre-book an appointment on when can you go to the mall and when can you go to a store inside that mall. Fastest fingers first, digital payment. So nowadays everyone is preferring and is insisting on digital payment because no one wants to touch currency. So is this positive or is this negative? It is definitely positive when it comes to a lot of other factors related to the economic development of the country. So digital money is becoming a reality. People don't want to swipe credit cards. Brands and retail owners do not want credit cards to be given, and digital money is becoming a new reality. Digital banking is here to stay. Tear your own receipt. So in case you are very, very critical and you are very, very particular that you want a physical receipt, then no retailer is going to tear and print a receipt and give it to you. You have to print your own receipt in case you are not comfortable with a digital receipt. So that's also a new normal all over the world. This has begun to happen already. People are dealing through plexiglass, so it is now like standing behind a bank's teller machine, and then you're dealing with someone behind some kind of a separation. This is also becoming a new normal In fact, cubicles have been made where accountants have been found to be seated inside. So it reminds you of going to the State Bank of India, and your accountant is sitting, your teller is sitting behind a cash desk, which is completely secured. No more beauty consultations for the women in the group. Beauty consultation is a big no. So no more can you walk into a shopper stop and go to a Parkos and you will have somebody trying to tell you or how to apply makeup. So this is becoming another challenge for the beauty business, where more and more app-based consultations or artificial interface-based consultations have already become a norm. Speed run. So retailing, which always remained to be a leisurely pastime, retail therapy was an important criteria. Now it is not the case anymore. You have to make it fast, easier, and safer for your customers. So the shopping habits, the consumer behavior, as well as the service behavior is changing. No more can people hang around in an air-conditioned environment just because it is too hot outside, because air conditions are not even being allowed inside enclosed spaces. Last but not the least, no lifts, no restrooms, no welcome water, no drink or no air conditioning. So restrooms are being locked. In the malls which are going to be open, no lifts are going to be allowed, because in closed spaces you have to use the stairways. No welcome drinks, no water, no air conditioning is being allowed anywhere in the world. This is the new normal, which is not so nice in the current heated hot scenario. We are passing to a 48 degrees temperature in India. It is not a very welcome move, but this is the new reality of retail. So what's the new model of retail? What are the retail pundits looking at, and how is the model being redefined or reshaped? I have a few points here. Number one, there is an accelerated tech modernization. So more and more retail tech is going to play an important role. You must be reading about virtual trunk shows. You must be reading of online fashion shows. Even in fact, even in India, FDCI has just announced yesterday a 100% digitized fashion show model, which was earlier being done only in a Shanghai Fashion Week or a Paris Fashion Week, etc. It's Armani was the first one to have done it, but now it is coming to India as well. So use of data, Internet of Things, and artificial intelligence is got to be used and learned to manage operations in a very positive direction. Next, what are we looking at? Retail tech, as I said, is going to be the new reality. So what you see in the picture is what is a magic mirror. So magic mirrors is going to become a new reality in India, which will be using artificial, augmented reality, virtual reality, artificial intelligence. These things are going to penetrate all aspects of our lives, from retail to healthcare to travel to banking. So you will soon have refrigerators telling you in advance that milk is getting order is over, and the milk will be ordered directly by the refrigerator to Amazon, and Amazon will replace your essential items without you even getting involved. So that kind of artificial intelligence is coming into the retail all over the world. Contactless service, digital banking, payments, AI, augmented VR, 3D reality will become a part of our lives. So fashion shows, fashion models are being replaced by 3D avatars. So no more will be you seeing physical fashion shows, but digital fashion shows using a 3D avatar of a model. So mannequins will become redundant, and you will only see a 3D rotatable model, which is avatar, which is showing you the garment from every direction. Magic mirrors, as I told you, were already introduced in the retail scenario sometime in the year 2004, but they have been picking up speed now in the last 1 or 2 years, and very soon you will find that happening in India, where you don't need to go to the trial room to dress up and try the garment and look at yourself from a 360-degree perspective. The mirror will do everything for you. Omnichannel is becoming the new future. We have to radically accelerate our in-store omnichannel integration. So Bopis model, which is buy online and pick up in store, which was earlier prevalent only in America. So curbside delivery and deliveries is becoming now a reality. So what used to happen in a drive-in McDonald's is now happening in drive-in fashion, drive-in other items as well. So you pre-book your order, you pre-place your order, and you just drive through at a pre-designated time, a pre-designated spot, and the delivery will be left into your car. So that's the kind of omni-channel integration that is happening. Brands are trying to encourage people to come into the store to pick up their delivery, so there is some kind of a physical interaction. How can brands use this in their favor? Something which I will tell you in the later part of my presentation. Introduce contactless self-service features for omni-channel transactions. This we already discussed. So people don't want to come in contact. You have to leave. Even today, a pizza is left at your doorstep on a contactless delivery model. So human-to-human contact is to be avoided at all at all times. In physical retail, lesser number of staff serving lesser number of people, clients will necessitate a new layout. So retail stores layouts are being reworked around. The customer journey is being relooked at, so the customers don't clash with each other. There will be escort provided at the safe distance so that inadvertently you don't run into another customer. So pre-appointed lesser number of people will be allowed in per square foot. Customer space is being allocated, so depending on the size of the store, how many people can you take in at one point in time is already being predefined, and the state will start playing a very important role in these kind of defining factors as well. Next, fast fashion is going to see a dip. Customer will choose quality over quantity. Slow fashion, meaning luxury fashion accessories, can see a revival. This 2 months of lockdown coming into the third month now, people are already questioning the amount of clothes that they have in their wardrobes, and they are wondering, why the hell have I got so many assets which I will never be able to use? So more and more people are going towards high value but better quality. So sustainable luxury or sustainable fashion, I would say, or environmentally friendly fashion is the way forward. So more and more people are looking at a better quality, whether it is grocery, whether it is clothing, whether it is anything. It is all got to do with better quality. Quality over quantity is the latest trend which is going to come in. Recycle your clothes. So as I said, sustainability is going to be the new buzzword, whereas it was brands were only skimming the surface, but now no more. So recycle, upcycle, those are going to be the trends. So what was happening maybe in your wedding attire, where you were borrowing your grandmother's lehenga and bringing out the border from there and trying to make a new dress, is now coming in denim, and there are special brands which are producing upcycled and recycled clothing. I think we have a panelist amongst us who's going to throw more light on this. So, conspicuous consumption is likely to be replaced by conscious, responsible, and sustainable fashion. That is what the basic trend is going to be. Brands can no longer just skim the surface and will perhaps need to be more sustainability aware and conscious in their offerings. You see the new format of formal dining. So dining is again retail. Service by appointment and social distancing may reduce service capacity to 25 to 30% of existing formats. So private enclosures, empty tables. There are instances in Germany where since the restaurant could take in only limited number of people, there were empty tables. So not to make the people feel lonely, they had mannequins sitting on the empty table to give a sense of crowd in that particular space. So the restaurants in India are also already planning to have a slot-wise appointment. So 6 to 7, 7 to 8, 8 to 9, and people will be forced to get punctual. Like nowadays in Zoom meetings, less and less people are late. Otherwise, being late for meetings is a very standard for India. It is considered to be fashionable, but no more, because there is no excuse for a traffic jam, and more people turn up before time. Like this webinar, we already had participants before time. So those are some of the new norms which are going to come in. Security checks, hygiene check will become a necessity. So if you remember what happened after the 9/11 and what happened after the 26/11. So post 9/11, security checks at the airport became a new normal. And post 26/11, security checks at malls and hotels became the new normal. Now, post COVID, hygiene checks will take the part of security check as well. So this is going to become a new normal, and new SOPs. As per new SOPs, in countries like China, there are already apps provided to every individual, and he has to display on this app that he's a green QR coded person, which the government is allocating, similar to the Arogya Setu app. So every individual is coded as green, red, or orange, and only then they are allowed entry into certain areas. So that is going to become a new normal. Passengers allowed per car may be redefined. This has already happened. So the Uber Olas cannot take more than two passengers besides the driver. Even in a private car, no more than three passengers will be allowed to travel in a car. So the retail automobile business is going to probably see a positive growth, because more and more people will shy away from using Uber and Ola, and will prefer a private vehicle. So a single owner driven car is going to be back on the roads, and the smaller cars are going to see a rush back into their sales. In aviation, reduced number of passengers. So India has already started the aviation rules. There's some confusion because they started on 25th. But what you see on the screen is going to be the future, where the costs are going to be increased and seating arrangements are likely to be changed. So lesser number of passengers and a new layout is what is being planned in aviation systems as well. Sharing reusable and rental economy models could face a downfall due to hygiene requirements. This is a fact because today, when in the past 2 3 years, renting economy and sharing economy really had picked up, where people were using Uber, as I just explained to you, or were buying reusable garments, or we were buying reusable accessories, at least in the luxury space that was happening. But in countries, in the Western countries, even brands like Marks and Spencer had already started the cycling movement, and you could sort of rent clothes for occasion, etc. So those kind of models are going to now take a beating, and they will face a downturn because hygiene is becoming of prime importance. People will buy less, but they will buy a better quality. So fast fashion is going to take a real big beating. Sorry. And lastly, grab and go. So as I said earlier, the leisurely retail therapy model is going to be non-existent, because as a consumer, your behavior is going to be, I am scared of spaces I'm not familiar with. So I want to just go in, pick up and get out. So you'll probably place an order in advance and you will go pick up your merchandise and get the hell out of that particular retail space. So this is a near fear phobia which is going to come in, and retailers need to prepare themselves to service this changed consumer behavior. You have to prepare your workforce for the next normal. You will have to improve training and onboarding. So you really will have to focus on ensuring that your people are well trained, because a lot of changes are going to come into retail, and retailers and brand owners will have to focus on ensuring that their staff is up and about with the new developments. So with these changes, what are the opportunities that are available to us in the retail business? Let me share a few fresh opportunities. Physical store is a place where the tangible part of products embrace the intangible part of the brand's DNA through unique experiences. Mind you, the purpose of telling you this is that branding is now going to become extremely important. No longer are people going to trust anything and everything. So the trust part of the brand is communicated only by the brand. Your brand communications will play a critical role, whether you're a startup, whether you're a micro enterprise or a mid segment or a SME, whatever you are, your brand is the one which can communicate the trust which is related to hygiene. So unless you are able to make a customer feel comfortable that you will take good care of him, you meaning a brand will take good care of him, and he's not at risk by using your product, you will not be able to service him anymore. There is no better opportunity than using the limited retail space available to you for displaying this, because that is the time when the customer actually comes in contact with the product. So if you do up your retail space in a manner where the layout has been made so impressively that the customer feels comfortable and he's able to understand the intangible part of your brand, that is the DNA of your brand, you should be able to communicate by delivering unique experiences. If you look at this store in London, it's a Burberry store in London. Social distancing rules within stores is an opportunity to transform stores into museums. So you see, the store is more like a museum. It is not a crowded, cluttered space. Customers will be able to see, touch, and try on the art collection. So if your product is displayed more like a piece of art rather than a fast-moving product, then I think the customer is going to really see value in what he is trying to buy. So you need to use the social distancing norms to your advantage, and you must exploit this to ensure that the experience lingers on in the customer's mind. So you can go on YouTube and you can find enough videos on the Burberry store, and you will find that how they exploit their store as a theater to have experiences left in the customer's mind. And mind you, this is an old store, this is not a new store. So the message I'm trying to give you through this picture is that now social distancing norms are going to require a less cluttered store and lesser number of people. Whereas a luxury brand like Burberry always had adopted that, and this is probably a store which is made in 2005 or 2006 at London Regent Street. And lastly, the last word, retail will survive, but retail must adjust. So all of us who are interested in the retail as a career or as a business will have to adjust to the new norms, because there is going to be a major shakeup and a major turnaround in the retail practices of any sector that you might think of. Lastly, a few words about us. What do we do? So I represent an organization called Luxury Connect. We have three different businesses. We are in the strategic management services, advisory services, primarily for the luxury and premium business. We also have a talent vertical where we have created India's first and only luxury business school. And we have a knowledge sharing vertical called the Luxury Crux. So 360-degree solutions is what we provide through strategic management services and talent management services, and also compliance management services. LCBS, that's our offering. We are India's first and only luxury business school. We are 8 years in the business, and we are trying to change the skill landscape of luxury in India. This is the number of people we have done: 2,400 executives, 100% campus placement. 50 corporates are working with us, or we have served them, award-winning faculty, etc., etc. And that's the third and the new vertical, Luxury Crux, which is into news, analytics, reports, and trends. Our latest research finding on coronavirus and impact on Indian luxury, a summary of that was carried by Forbes, and you can Google and find and read that. Those are some of the clients that we work with, and you can see that they range from premium to luxury. There is Good Earth somewhere, and that's the connection with Deepti. Yeah, there's Good Earth. And last but not the least, I have recently penned a book called The Incredible Indian Luxury Bazaar, which is currently till 31st on a pre-launch offer. Then it goes on Amazon, and you can find anything and everything about Indian luxury on this particular book. Thank you. I would rest my case here and ask the moderator to take over the mic again, please.
Thank you, sir. Now, we invite Ms. Indu Nair, co-founder, Asmi Designs LLP. Ms. Nair launched the handcrafted jewelry and apparel brand IHA. She has over 20 years of experience of retailing in India and was also associated with Gautier India Limited and Good Earth, which is one of the most popular homegrown luxury lifestyle brand, both nationally and internationally, with showrooms that were one of a kind in India. Ma'am, you may please proceed with your session now.
Thank you. And welcome all. So, let me give you a brief background about myself. I started this business around 2.5 years back. We started because we are basically, we manufacture, we design, we manufacture handcrafted products. It can be jewelry or it can be apparel, anything. And we retail it across India and to select international outlets. The reason we got into this was because at that time we felt that there are not many, I mean, if you actually assess the Indian market today, there are not many Indian homegrown brands, very few Indian homegrown brands, either in the apparel space or for that matter in the furniture space. These two are the spaces I've worked in, and I'm kind of more aware of what's happening in this space. So even in terms of apparel, I mean, besides a Fab India or a Biba or a Good Earth or maybe an Anita Dongre, you do not have many players in this field, in this space per se, and at accessible pricing. Either they're extremely expensive or they're like very cheap and of suspect quality. And that is the only reason why brands like Zara or an H&M or a Mango or many other multinational brands could actually come to India and take over the entire create a dent in the Indian market today. So that is where apparel stood. And with regard to furniture, again, when you come to furniture, majority of the furniture market was dependent on imports from China, imports from Malaysia, imports from Indonesia. Very few Indian homegrown brands. Yes, you had a Pepper Fry or you had an Urban Ladder, but again, many of their furniture, very few of them was manufactured locally, but a lot of them was imported. So there was a high reliance on imports from there in there also. And so if you see, actually, though we keep talking about make in India, there's never been a very sustainable or there's never been a very robust make in India actually that has been happening. I mean, we've been best at servicing orders for abroad, I mean, for international brands. So, for example, our export business, we are one of the largest textile exporters. We are one of the largest apparel exporters. In year 2019, our total export, textile and clothing exports stood at 36.62 billion. So we are very good at making for others, but we are not that good at making for internal consumption. And that is where we were during pre-COVID times. So during pre-COVID times, what was the state of India? Our manufacturing was much better served for serving others rather than for the internal consumption. But in terms of retailing, we had shops from we had local shop, we had local brands, we had international brands, we had brands across the spectrum, and all of them were doing pretty well. I think India, the Indian market, I mean, many were scared that with the coming of e-commerce, retailing might actually take a dip in sales, but that never happened because Indian consumers, especially, they like the touch and feel. They actually feel, I mean, they trust seeing the product and then purchasing it much more than just trusting online and buying it. Yes, but the migration had started happening. You could see that there was an increase in online purchase over the years, but it would have taken much more time than today where we stand. To a large extent, I believe, and we believe, that COVID has is kind of a game changer in the way the industry will now function, especially with regard to retailing, because overnight it has made us rethink assumptions, rethink everything. I mean, for example, I'll just give you an example. Many of us, we were not very tech savvy or tech dependent, or we never adopted technology to that extent. Whether it be back end or it be front end, we were very slow in terms of tech adoption. But this whole COVID crisis showed us that, that is one thing which we needed to adopt like ASAP. We needed to be extremely tech savvy, whether it comes to cloud computing, whether it comes to cloud, um, having all your data on cloud, whether it comes to accessing computers through customers through technology. Being tech savvy is no more a luxury; it's become a hygiene in the whole space, whether it's retailing or e-tailing or anything. Everyone has a smartphone now. I mean, we are talking about each and everyone downloading an Arogya Setu. And moving forward, I'm sure, I mean, there will be many more cell phones, smartphones available at a very cheap price for access to everybody, which means that technology adoption needs to be much faster. And that is something that it was a huge challenge. It is still a huge challenge because many of us are not. But this is something I see going at a very furious pace because all of us have realized the importance of it. Second, in terms of challenges, again, when I come back to manufacturing, what happens is that, as we are all aware, there has been this huge shift of labor movement across. Suddenly, the migrant, I mean, all of us are, why India is a very attractive hub for manufacturing with regard to exports and all, because after China, we are the cheapest country. Our labor cost is very cheap. Now, in China, there's also a lot of sweatshops. In India, we do not have those sweatshops. In India, to a large extent, the labor is paid fair and square, above minimum wages. We do not indulge in child labor, especially because many of these international brands, they are very strict about that. So we used to follow certain policies, but because our rupee was much lesser compared to a dollar, we were still cheaper relatively, and hence we were, after China, we, Bangladesh, Philippines, we all were very attractive hubs for manufacturing. Now, this manufacturing also happened because of the large migrant population that was available in the cities for risk taking. Now, because of this COVID and the migration of this population to their hometowns, a lot of us, including people like us, we are struggling with our manufacturing. Suddenly, to get 100% workforce, to get workforce across, I mean, it maybe you may have a particular section of workforce for one manufacturing, one section, but a more specialized section, you suddenly don't have the workforce for that. For a small business like ours, if we are affected so much, and we've been hearing from many others in the industry, many people are not able to work 100% full time just because of that, because they do not have the manpower currently in place. This is a huge challenge for us because unless a manpower is not there, we will not be able to get our manufacturing out. And if we do not get our manufacturing out, consumption will still be there. So who will feed the consumption? And again, we may have to depend on exports, or again, we may have to depend on imports from other countries to feed the demand. Second, a lot of our components are still being sourced internationally. I mean, even when you come to furniture, like even when you make furniture, our hinges or our hardware, we depend on Germany to supply that hardware. We depend on China to supply us that hardware. When it comes to furniture, when it comes to apparel, there are a lot of threads, there are a lot of weaves, there are a lot of those kind of stuff which actually is purchased from China. So what happens that because of that in the supply chain industry, I mean, manufacturing is one aspect, but the component part of it, many of those components we still depend. We are not fully Indian, as in make in India, as in everything is made in India. No, a lot of fabric or a lot of threads, for that matter, silk threads, they come from China, and suddenly the whole supply is stopped. So again, we have to rethink. Okay, what do we do? Do we use that silk now? How do we suddenly get back to the whole system of again manufacturing and getting things in place? Especially in this environment where it mandates that we have to be socially distant, especially in this environment where people have still not come back to workforce fully, reassessing all that. And then we're also short of capital, figuring out the capital to again, because it's completely a new business model you're looking at, because now you're not looking at doing the same styles which you're doing, because now you have to rethink what styles to create, basis the resources, you have to rethink how to make products, everything is being rethought of. That's a huge challenge. Export, suddenly a lot of export orders are either put on hold or they've been postponed. This has caused a huge setback to the export industry, because many of them, I mean, like I said, we had literally become for us, our manufacturing base was totally dependent on export. We were hardly feeding the Indian consumers. Majority of the consumption was happening from the export market. So now suddenly, when there is the orders are postponed, yes, the orders will materialize. It will materialize after 6 months. Suddenly, there'll be an influx of orders when things stabilize. But till then, to sustain, to ensure that the system is in place, to ensure that the people are still paid or the laborers are still there, it's a huge, it's a, it's an extremely huge challenge. And what about the products that have already been manufactured? What do they do with that? You can't just keep the inventory lying there for such a long time. And second, also the cost of manufacturing will now go up, because earlier manufacturing meant that as long as you provided a decent workspace, as long as you had the people coming and they had access to decent amenities, it was more than enough. But just like in retail, like there is a certain set of rules to be followed at manufacturing workspace also, which includes that there has to be a social distancing between one person to the other person. We have to ensure that the people wear a mask, there is a temperature scanning, there is enough hand sanitizers everywhere, have access to clean toilets at every time, has a office which is very well ventilated, and you can't use AC. At the same time, you have to have it cool enough so that people are comfortable. And similarly, gloves when you're packaging stuff, that's a cost which was not incurred earlier. And at this time, to incur that cost, you can't even charge it to the consumer, because neither is the consumer in a space where they can afford to buy more expensive stuff. So it adds to the manufacturing cost. And then I want to come back to sustainability, like even Abhay had mentioned in his whole thing about sustainability. Now, sustainability as a movement we had started before pre-COVID times itself. There was a movement towards sustainability. Even international brands were talking the talk on sustainability. What is sustainability? Sustainability is a very wide topic. But at the core of it, sustainability means creating something or selling something in a way that is sustainable. Sustainable as in, it is sustainable for the environment. And environment can include everything. It can the entire ecosystem. So it can be the environment per se, which means that the product is biodegradable. It can be the ecosystem in terms of paying fair wages to the employees. It can be ecosystem in treating them with respect. It can be in terms of lessening the amount of carbon footprint. All this comes under sustainability. So there were this huge talks about sustainability. But now suddenly maintaining sustainability is, I very frankly, we all see it as a challenge, because to a large extent, plastic is still preferred now more than any other, because covering your garment or covering your, earlier we all were moving out of plastic. I mean, it had become the government themselves had mandated that we should all move away from single use plastics. But today what happens, because of this COVID, because of hygiene, many of us are again going back to using plastics and those other things which are much more, it's more easier to maintain and easier for long distance, and that chances of it getting infected, you just remove it and throw it. It's much more easier than packaging it in brown paper and then removing it, and there's a whole lot of expense involved in that. So sustainability, I feel in manufacturing, at least for the next 6 months, sustainability will take a backseat, because the focus is more on getting our feedback together, getting the huge labor population. I mean, all of us are still trying to figure out how to get the workforce in place, because there's so much of movement even as of now, though in Delhi to a large extent the lockdown, I mean, we're all working, but still people are going to their hometown, and we've been hearing across from everyone that they still prefer going back, because there's this whole sense of fear that has come in to them, and they don't feel confident sitting in the city, and they all want to move back. And this drain of laborers from the city can either benefit two ways. That means the manufacturing hubs will move from the city to the towns if the towns take advantage of it and bring back industry friendly policies, or there'll be a or it'll be 6 months to 1 year of major churn where everybody is just trying to figure out, and finally the migrants come back, but we lose that 1 year time. It's still very early to tell, because right now the indications are people are still moving, people are still not very confident about staying back. There are few who have stayed back, but there are many more who are still leaving, and this will definitely impact the manufacturing industries, especially the manufacturing industries which are there in the city. So the challenges are plenty. Capital is also a huge issue. All of us are still grappling with the challenges, including us. Every day brings a new challenge, because right now again we and the the lockdown getting extended, also there is a lot of miscommunication and misinformation going on at that level. Because of that, people, many of them are still not clear as to what the exact scenario is, and that is feeding into their fear a bit more. So it is very uncertain, and things are, we have to take things as they come. We This is the time to be agile, because things are changing every day, and suddenly one fine day they find the vaccine and we feel that things are just back to normal. So it has to be, we have to be with an agile mindset. We have to conserve capital, but at the same time take calculated risk, because calculated risk pays. And I'll come to that when I come to the opportunities, which I think now I'll move on to opportunities. I've listed down all the challenges, but the opportunities, very frankly, I see are plenty. The biggest opportunity for apparel and furniture being that consumption will still be there. Yes, there is a section of population who will be scared of spending, but there is an equal number of people who are totally dependent on, say, people like Zara, people like H&M. The kind of sales Zara and H&M were doing were insane numbers. There's a whole lot of population who still wants who still wants a garment to wear, who still wants furniture, and especially now with work from home being the norm, people want furniture, people want furnishings for their house which will make it look more interesting and more attractive. So the demand, I actually see the demand for homegrown brands, for made in India brands, growing. Where the biggest challenge for that would be in terms of the supply, because we had not geared ourselves to be catering to the Indian industry and to be scaling up to that extent. So mapping that, trying to build up a supply chain and willing to take that risk of investing money, of taking that loans which are available today and investing in that infrastructure or investing in that capability to gear and to build ourselves towards that demand. I think people can afford to take that calculated risk, because we have an audience. There is a huge, it's also opening up newer territories, because there were made in India earlier never had that kind of access to territories, because people were still dependent on a lot of fast, like Abhay himself mentioned, fast fashion brands had really taken over the market. So there is that whole section of population still willing to buy. I mean, the first thing, the moment the lockdown lifted, white goods sales immediately picked up, because people needed those. People will still need garments. People will still need work from home furniture. Will need still need furnishings and everything. We just need to ensure that we invest in it and we are ready with the supply. We are ready with the products for it. We have to reassess our distribution channels. Retail by itself was moving towards an omni-channel model, like Abhay mentioned. It was, I mean, but the movement was very slow. Maybe what this COVID-19 will do, or this kind of disease will do, is it'll make the adoption towards moving towards an omni-channel method or adopting technology much, much more faster. Because today it is COVID-19, but the way things are moving tomorrow, it may be something else. Because COVID-19 had a precursor to it, which was SARS. SARS, because it didn't affect a majority of the population, because it was less infectious, we never felt it. However, places like South Korea, places like Hong Kong, places like Taiwan had gone through SARS, and hence they were much better prepared with COVID-19. And because of SARS, they had already implemented a lot of hygiene stuff, which we are talking about today, across their public spaces, which includes wearing masks, which includes having hand sanitizers, accessible hand sanitizers everywhere. These are stuff which we are just getting into only now. So COVID-19, post COVID-19, even if COVID-19 we find a cure for it, we will still always have the fear of a next pandemic, because people will travel, people need to travel, and there will be a chance that tomorrow again things may go back to normal and diseases will spread. But the only advantage of that would be that we may be better prepared, and for being better prepared, it would mean that we have to reassess certain things, how the way we are doing now, and there will be an overnight change as to how the way we've been doing things and the way we will be doing things. And the opportunities for that is, one, we have to, technology adoption has to be on a war footing. Things have to work. I mean, things from your supply chain to your retailing, things have to be now tech enabled, because that's the way forward. We will be, if suppose make in India is going to be our future, which is a huge opportunity for us, because there's a huge number of consumers in India who are, and across tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities. We often overlook tier 2 and tier 3 cities, but some of the biggest consumers are from those market. And for to catering to them with our homegrown brands, which I said in my context that we do not have enough of homegrown brands in India today. So catering to them is a huge opportunity for us. Sustainability craft clusters. Now, before pre-COVID times, the government had started this whole exercise called creating craft clusters across India, where they had created a group of craftsmen who are good at, say, in Madhya Pradesh, if the weavers were good at making the weave of chanderi, they had created an entire cluster around it with all the weavers, accessible weavers, and many designers could buy from them directly, use it in their clothes, and spread it across. What used to happen initially was many of the high-end designers used to buy them, used to put the extremely high markup, and hence the volume of that, the amount it was picked up and the volume of that was being sold was much less. And in the value chain, the only people who were benefiting was the high-end designer. The weaver still got paid very little. What most likely may happen with this change is that people will look at volumes from these also. So what may be that the weavers and the craftsmen and the artisans may finally get paid what is required to be paid. Maybe there will be a new realization that sustainability to at its core also means that paying, we take care of every person in the value chain, not only one section of people in the value chain. Because I have been seeing the change across. We have been, when we have been monitoring our customers itself, or we've been talking to other people, a lot of customers have been showing a lot of interest towards brands who have, during these COVID-19 times, taken an interest to ensure that their employees are safe, or have done some kind of social impact initiative or any such work, which means that people are moving. I mean, maybe sustainability in terms of the environment, that means less usage of plastic, may not be there immediately, but sustainability in terms of taking care of the human factor, taking care and ensuring that even the migrant laborers are working with you, they're paid their fair and share due. Or, I mean, not paying them exorbitant salaries, but at least paying them regular what is owed to them. A company that takes care of that and takes them along through the value chain will definitely, I think there will be more emphasis on that, which rightly should be. And even consumers may reward companies who actually pay emphasis towards that. That means a socially conscious companies may actually end up doing better. And finally, what I wanted to say was that in the only thing with made in India always has been, we've had a very chalta hai attitude towards quality, which why we did very well with exports was because the exporters were very strict with us in terms of the quality specs they wanted. So they used to give exactly that, this is how I want, and they used to do a thorough quality check, and we were okay about doing that. But when it comes to Indian consumers, we were not that thorough in terms of giving that kind of quality. That is why Indian consumers would prefer to buy a made in India product from a foreign brand, because the quality of that product was still more trustworthy than an Indian person trying to sell it to the Indian market. We have to start focusing on quality and not take our consumers lightly. Consumers are aware, they've seen the best of the world, they've traveled across, they know what is available and what is not. We can't take them for a ride. If we focus on quality, if we focus on, we have a wealth of craft, we have a wealth of designs, we have a wealth of knowledge. It's up to us how we take that, how we create quality products, and how we create the demand. So opportunities are there. We need to change our mindset. We need to change. We need to adapt to a changing uh, environment very fast. And I think yes, we just need to be more agile, and that's about it.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, we invite Ms. Deepti Agarwal, HR and Strategy Consultant, ex-Reliance Brands Limited. Ms. Agarwal has progressive experience in leading HR vertical across various sectors, and led HR function in different capacities, gained experience in strategic HR management through talent and performance management, people and organizational development, cultural assimilation and transformation. She has also held leadership positions, handling entire gamut of human resource management at Reliance Brands Limited, Genesis Group, Isha Good Earth, and at Indian Retail School. Ma'am, you may please proceed with your session now. Deepti ma'am, your microphone is on. Yeah. Unmute please, ma'am.
Today, I welcome everyone. Never ever thought that it'll be a topic for discussion. And we are all interested in seeing how we are going to move forward. We never had any prime such mass this till date, indefinite period. And certainly these are very difficult times, what we are going through. And some will be more prepared than others. But unfortunately, this is pandemic and there is no playbook on this. But yes, for retailers, this is an opportunity wherein we have the opportunity to reassess our operational efficiencies instead of just processes. So in the given situation, we have lots of questions that needs to be answered. Questions like how we are going to open, what merchandise, what visual displays, what packaging, billing. Abhay has taken us through so many things that needs to be answered. Basically, how do we get back to business and how do we get back to performance? So there are a lot of such questions. So in a way, what we are actually supposed to do is reinvent, rethink, and move forward. And of course, HR, human resources, that's like a huge component around this. And I'm going to talk about that through this talk time. I'll just take you through a small presentation. So we are going to talk on the human resource perspective. Currently, mostly retailers are working with 30 to 50% of their staff, maybe 10 to 15% at some places or spaces, which means teams are lean, as some of the staff may be on sabbatical or have been laid off. So, what should we do? How do we still prepare ourselves for reopening? That's a big question in front of us. Indu also mentioned staffing is a big issue. And how do we prepare ourselves and what do we do before we start? Or if we have started, what are still needs to be done? So first thing that we must do is communicate and connect with staff. All the staff, either we have already laid off or people who are on long leave or sabbaticals or people who are coming. So have a continuous connect with them so that wherever there are right times, we can immediately connect with them, hire them, get them back to work. So while we do that, there is another thing we have to in parallel work upon is evaluate different employment models with respect to our requirements. Full-time, part-time, remote working, gig force. So there are various types of models available. We need to explore. We need to have our minds open towards all these models. So we need not just hire people full-time on the similar salaries on what they work. So we can look at cost-friendly models. We can look at options which is mutually agreeable to both the sides. So first thing, most importantly, then we need to do is rehire, retrain, and re-engage staff. So concentrate on your rehire strategy. So while we concentrate on a rehire strategy, first thing to be kept in mind is rehire people who have the ability to flex up, which means whenever there are right times and we want to increase their working hours, working days, their duration, we can do that. Then there should not be a problem with the people. So hire those people with ability to flex up. Rehire top performers, including those who can consistently go beyond their call of duty, because this is a pandemic time. So there will be tasks that needs to be done out of the box, out of the normal call of duty. Third thing, focus on staff communication and onboarding strategies. And most importantly here, it has to be done very quickly and very efficiently. We cannot afford to take a number of days. It has to be done between few hours and 1 or 2 days at a max. Because when people have already come, joined us, we need to understand what they have to be taken through, all the new changes that we have seen in Abhay's and in those discussions, that there are so many standard operating procedures that needs changes. We must have, if we are open, we already would have updated or we would have had in mind. But how do we train people on these things? That's ultra important. So, which is the next point, that train teams on updated processes with respect to new guidelines of social distancing, whether it is operational procedures, visual product merchandise, customer reconnect, we need to onboard them on the new stuff. So as store starts to reopen, let's understand some of the HR key considerations to first few weeks and beyond. So very first thing, we have to adapt a local strategy. We may have stores across the country, different geographies. Within a city, different areas. And different areas today are being treated differently as per the local strategy and local norms. So adapt to that strategy. Be transparent and try partnering with your store teams. So when we say be transparent, it would mean that share everything with your teams. Empower them with decision making. Involve them in the process so that they take mutual ownership, which is needed at this difficult time. So we have spoken about reinventing, rethinking about our operational efficiencies. Evaluate store opening hours, which is again an important thing during our preparation. We can evaluate store opening hours through data, through trends, through feedback from our teams, feedback from our customers. So let's start doing that, because it's a time to rethink around our already set norms. While we do that, additionally plan to spend at least 1 day in the store before you open the doors for cleaning, training, setting up the show. Be ready with supplies of hand sanitizer, masks, gloves, and their replenishments, because we understand right now there is some lead time towards these things. So have it ready in advance. Share, announce, and opening plans with teams, customers, as well as vendors. So there shouldn't be any ambiguity with anybody between our store teams, customers, and vendors around these opening plans. And so while we are doing most of these things, what are still the priorities for our store teams? So when stores are open, what are the next priorities? And that takes us to the most important question: how do we keep our staff safe, and how do we get back to performance? So here, I've just prepared a quick opening checklist. So opening checklist is basically a set of things. You can always refer to this. It will be there uploaded on the site. So when you are currently into opening, what do you need to do? Before, if you are still to open your stores, then what needs to be done? And after you have opened, what needs to be done? So these are very detail-oriented, plans written here, which is available very easily on net and used by most of the retailers. Sorry for this. Yeah. Give me a minute. Just a sec, guys. So yeah, so follow opening checklist, and then I'm concentrating more on some proactive behaviors that is expected out of our store teams. So adherence to new health and safety processes, daily hygiene routines, engaging customers throughout the transaction and every part of the transaction. Provide delightful customer experience and reassuring customers that they are in safe environment. And most important, be nimble, be very flexible. So we have to inculcate these behaviors within our store teams. Next important thing is learn, change, and adapt to new behaviors. So again, we learn from a lot of data points, right? And we should have that ability to quickly adapt to these new trends. Abhay has spoken about a lot of new trends. Pick up customers' expanding needs to continuously broaden the product offerings. So we have to have a watch as retail store teams, and we have to train our teams on this new watch, that how there is a shift in essential category, because a lot of customers who just realize I'm now buying from a neighborhood store, and they have some expanded needs towards some essential items which were earlier not essential. So we have to continuously have a watch around these things and share that feedback back with our leaders so that we can cater to those demands. Again, understand data trends and shopping peak hours, and accordingly we can actually uh, have conversions around our various aspects of shopping. We can use that. Be prepared for any changing regulations. In pandemic time, regulations will keep changing. So these are important things we have to look at. And when we say collect different data points, learn, adapt, change, that takes us to another area, which is actually our next question, that we have lots of data available in the store. And what do we do with that data? We have to see. So one of the things I have seen retailers push their teams to be data driven. So much data driven. Even Abhay and Indu would agree to that. While they were in retail, they will always talk on data. Data around conversions, data around sales per hour, average ticket value, unit per transaction, etc., etc. All of these metrics is actually important to run a retail business efficiently. But now most of this data is nonsensical at this point of time. So how should retailers be thinking around this data which is available in the stores? What can we do at this point of time? So how we have to leverage data with us is staff according to promotional calendars. So I'm sure as retailers we would have something in our minds with respect to promotional calendars for the upcoming seasons when we are open. Have staff strength and man hours as per relation between traffic and expected customer experience, not only as per your expected sales. Have a flexible payroll model. We have already specifically spoken about it. Most importantly, offer creative incentive plans for extraordinary initiatives driving sales. Use staff to traffic data and not sales. Use visit duration as a metric. So try using some of these metrics to reorient your data and leverage data. What should be the priorities for our managers who are basically running the show? So priorities for manager involves enable flexible payroll model. So we have already thought about flexible employment model, flexible payroll model. So manager's duty is to enable that, which means make it agreeable to the teams, sell it around with them, and sell it around to the each and every person, and convince staff and convince staff so that they are motivated even to work. Focus on their staff health and hygiene. Communicate new standards again and again till it becomes really a part of their behavior. That's most important, because building a habit and a behavior is a long process. So once we repeatedly do things, then it becomes a habit, and habit becomes a part of the behavior. Another very important task of a leader: keep teams engaged and motivated. How do we do that? It's a very difficult task. So first, I've just listed few points which came to my mind. Trust teams and empower them to take decision. So when we empower them to take decision, we establish a trust factor, and they take responsibilities also. Listen to their concerns, even small concerns. If you listen to their concerns, it matters to them. Communicate each and every organizational change, whether it is small or big, it has to be communicated. Then they feel they are involved in the entire process. Run specific engagement initiatives to pamper staff, to allow them to stay connected joyfully with their colleagues, with their brand, with their physical space. That is really needed for them to get motivated at every point of time. This is a very difficult situation. Even they are coming out, they are scared. They are scared about their own health and hygiene. So it's important we let them connect with the place. Highlight success, small or large. Share stories across the board around.
I request all the participants, please start sending your questions to Jyoti Gupta. We'll be taking up the questions after all the speakers have been done with their sessions. Thank you. Deepti ma'am. Ornamentation. She has coordinated and conducted more than 45 training programs for entry level and middle management executives for companies like Blues Clothing, Ebony, American Express, Creations, Titan Retail on product training, buying, and merchandising. Ma'am, you may please proceed with your session.
Thank you. Uh, Very warm welcome to all of you, the ones who have joined us as participants and our esteemed panelists. Uh, since my speakers have usually accommodated all the challenges and the opportunities that the retail is going through, the retail industry by and large is going through amidst this COVID-19 period, uh, I thought probably uh, let me just conclude in terms of what my esteemed panelists have said before. We just cast upon the entire session with okay. We talked about the luxury space, his insights, the kind of losses the industry is facing, which is huge in numbers, about 900 crores in total. He's also talked about the new norms, which we call as the normal now, and giving citing examples as in terms about the pre-booking with the leisure industry, with the entertainment industry. He has also talked about the accelerated technology modernization, the environmental friendly fashions, sharing about the reusable and rental economy models, and what is the importance of hygiene as of now, and how it would take a larger gamut, in fact, a larger gamut role playing in the future times to come. Indu also has catered to a large extent the supply chain disruptions. She has spoken about the distribution channels, the importance of the distribution channels, the large exporters of garments that India was doing for outside world, but when it came to our own inside world, it was difficult. So here, I would quickly like to talk a little about the progression of the consumer behavior, which I believe is a little more important because we are in the business of retail. And for us, consumer is everything. And consumer at the bottom of the pyramid or at the top of the pyramid certainly holds a very unique and important proposition. So, taking quickly about the progression as far as the consumer behavior is concerned, I'm sorry we have switched off the webcam, maybe because there's a bandwidth issue. So, as Abhay just mentioned, the retail as essentials and non-essentials. Though there is again a controversy what should be the essentials and what should fall in the non-essentials. But primarily, if I had to say, essentials is what the COVID times is talking about, where we have the Kirana stores taking a lead in the entire retail gamut. So, well, in this now phase, we'll go through the three phases: now, next, and beyond. So the now phase is certainly the COVID times, where we're talking about the crisis that is having a long-term impact on consumer behavior, and retailers will need to devise some transformation strategies to better match this new reality. Uh, Talking about the current uncertainty, the consumer behavioral changes are emerging, and the way they are emerging are a kind of insight for us to understand, plan, and strategize for future. So there are significant surges in e-commerce and digital world, which we are seeing that earlier it was a part of people using it at their choices, but now it has become more of a necessity, as if we had to learn over, if we had in fact unlearned to learn something new. So while we see that the consumers have focused all of a sudden all on Kirana stores, they are continuing to host smaller crowd, both in urban and rural areas. The priorities have moved to health and safety of the frontline staff, which my dear friend Deepthi has already just mentioned that the staff is very important. Again, the stores which are operational for logging of the workforce due to collapsed demand or lockdown, the restricted travels, flexible remote working arrangements for non-store facing employees. Again, here, as she very rightfully mentioned, that the crowd management due to panic buying while maintaining adequate social distancing standards at grocery stores has just taken the most front seat. Now, as we are talking about the consumers, what I have seen here is the cross function teams working very remotely that lead to technology challenges like for example remote application accesses, video conferencing, cloud management, augmenting digital infrastructure to cope with spike in online traffic. All this is nothing but to cater to our end consumers. So when I say a contactless consumer experience, all these cross-function teams come into picture, which also includes our VPN bandwidth. So managing supply chain disruptions of essentials, which certainly includes our grocery, packed foods, home care, which are the most important needs as in the times. So what happens when there is a production shutdown, a restriction on truck movement while meeting unprecedented spike in demand? What we see here is the store closures and significant drop in demand for non-essentials, which we call as certainly apparel, lifestyle, furniture, leading to inventory pileup of current season and expected arrival of next season stock. So certainly a coordination between online and offline teams in handling significant spike in online demand is very, very necessary. So that leads us to the very important aspect of effective planning for short-term liquidity and for the working capital management in non-essential retail. So while we're talking about the meetings, we're talking about what to fix. The cost obligations, what are our cost obligations? Certainly the rentals, the salaries in absence of adequate revenue inflows, and all this that leads to almost over half of overall expenses of retailers and retailers maybe with restaurants, with luxuries, with our essential, uh, we've been talking about malls, uh, any and every place where we cater to the consumer segment. So that leads up to a point that the progression of consumer behavior will certainly decide the next way or pave way for us to do a very planned way of moving next into the forward retailing. So quickly, what I feel, there are few things that the key retailers need to act upon. And those points probably would be prudence in finance, our quick in thinking and reassessing, a very tactful in talent management, which talks about entirely HR, smoothed up in the supply chain, and effective customer retention, and responsible regulatory and legal compliances. Now, if I have to talk about all these aspects, that would take about a lot of time, but quickly let me tell you that we have to, if I am a retailer and I am asked to take quick actions in post-COVID time, because now is over, we are moving to next and beyond. Now, the next situation would be, how should we get into sustainability? How should we sustain ourselves? And having sustained ourselves, how do we grow? Grow in a manner before COVID or any disruptions. I mean, disruptions certainly bring about a change. They put us to a test. And that test always tells us that this is the way we need to move ahead, leaving behind the old style of working. So, certainly, what we were doing earlier has all of a sudden become redundant in across the channels, with the way we purchase things, we consume things, and even all the aspects related to the retail market. So the first retailer action certainly is the finance. That's where everybody, each of us are being hit at. So everybody would want to continue to cut expenditure without hurting the growth. They would like to consolidate, shut underperforming assets. Certainly, they would like to shut down certain stores or the warehouses which are non-performing. They're not earning any revenues. They'd like to reconsider capital expenditures, which means, why should I start new stores? Why should I do some kind of a refurbishments? They would like to even review consignments which are branded and private label stocks for each store individually in non-essential retail. Mind you, which what I have been seeing even in formats which are selling in the wholesale categories, for example, even D-marts. What sells in DMart right now is certainly the essential items, which is gaining more popularity and generating the kind of revenue which probably the non-essentials have been absolutely at have already all of a sudden become a zero stock for them. But the zero stock has to move sometime. So when we open up, what would be the strategy for a retailer? All of a sudden the retailers would like to cut down their stocks. They would like to sell off or rather get rid of the stock by discounting them, or maybe they would not like to make any further purchases for the next upcoming seasons. So eventually a prudence in finance would be the top of the mind list for any retailer. Another important aspect would be about reassessing. The retailers will have to build swifter crisis management. See, important aspect that I have been listening to many retailers, many panelists. What I feel as of now that the retailers will have to have an inward looking. They will have to look inward so as to understand what is that they need to assess or rather reassess in the times of crisis, because it is all about ecosystem. You have to make new collaborations by reassessing, checking the viability. You have to repurpose the assets. You'll have to assess the growth in alternative revenue streams. You'll have to extend them further in case if you wish to fuel growth. So reassessing becomes a very important aspect. Third, our HR. Since uh, three of my dear friends have just spoken about the movement of the migrating the migrating stuff. Uh, Labor has all of a sudden become very important. India is certainly known for a cheap labor. That is why we attract so many exporters. But all of a sudden, we find the workers who remained as a migrant worker have become so very important to us. So there is a need of tactfully managing the talent management. So certainly, as Deepthi rightfully said, that we have to ensure employee safety through health checks of staff. We have to also ensure there is a lot of flexibility in the remote working capabilities. certainly will have to now assess the capability of a person and then design the entire work area and the work timings for them. A bit of a financial support to the frontline workers will be very essential because it is the frontline workers which are very important to any retailer, especially those. See, we cannot be thinking about even in e-commerce. Our frontline worker is very important, the people who do the deliveries. E-commerce certainly is a very excellent omni channel, but finally, who delivers at my door? Who's that one person who's going to keep a pizza or a garment or anything which I order through an e-commerce site? So certainly somebody will be required in all the channels, in all the omni channels. We'll have to see that how we are going to reduce the supply chain, making it more beneficial, reducing the time gap, and rather revenue oriented. So, extending a financial support to the frontline workers, we really need to redeploy the talent to alternate activities such as we could be even looking at the temporary staffing at stores from restaurants or closed workplace and offline retailers, relocating talent to online channels. So, something like one industry shows a poor performance, the workforce is then engaged in the next industry. So we'll have to probably re engage the entire workforce and train them. Training also will become a very important aspect, especially when we are moving into an online channel where we need to train ourselves, the retailers who've usually been offline, and a hybrid mode as well. So the workforce will have to be trained both in the offline as well as the online mode, which we call as usually a hybrid that they're able to move at both the sides. Um, Third, certainly would be the sprucing up in the supply chain. We'll have to have a bolster in e-commerce, subscriptions, home or curbside delivery to directly reach the consumers. We also need to diversify our supply chain, move forward for alternatives. Uh, to mitigate risk, we have to certainly source from various locations, not just be stuck with one or two locations, rather have a presence felt at many locations so that we can mitigate this kind of risk. Certainly, when we talk about developing a smart logistic capability to enable making quick adjustment in sources and supply, uh, we're looking at major distribution centers, especially if we take the example of this COVID lockdown. What we would certainly look forward is those areas which are absolutely hit through COVID, which is the next closest distribution channel around that. So having a having a distribution channel closer to the COVID affected area certainly would not disrupt the uh, supply of essential or even the close to non-essential items, and the customer is directly connected or probably can feel connected with uh, the supplier. So certainly the evaluation part of the warehouses that can be automated to reduce lab or to provide some bit of a flexibility will always be the next important aspect. Uh, we'll look certainly look forward for a customer retention. I don't know how fast we will be able to talk about on the subject of customer retention, but it is going to be a tough job. Certainly, we have been connected. All the retailers have been connected through SMS, through apps, through various other services. But as very rightfully said by Abhay, there are going to be store timings. So the availability would be as per the store timings. Uh, a lot of hygiene measures to portray image of a responsible brand would have to be restored. Certainly because you have to realign your stores space to implement social distancing. You will have to also increase the hygiene part. When I say hygiene part, it means measures, which is digital displays, keep reminding the customer that they have to maintain a social distance, uh, putting up the sanitizers at careful distances. So these would be the certain steps that have to be undertaken to probably build up that trust in a brand that it is a hygiene brand, safe for consumers to come back to the stores. And probably that would be the first important aspect to build up the trust base with the brand for a consumer. Certainly, that which we've been talking about, retailers' challenges, the retailers are going to have a responsibility in regulatory and legal compliance. That's very more important because stores should have an adequate display of directives laid down by the government, and that would have to be followed by each employee. So there cannot be flaunting of norms. There has to be some checklist to which all the employees will have to be directed. They need to be taught and trained so that they follow it in the stores, which also I believe is going to add on to the brand value of the store, because certainly the customers would love to come to a store which is disciplined, follows norms, and rather it reminds its customers to follow the same norms. Uh, Having said about the customers, it is very important that we come to a new retail background post COVID disruption, which will talk about a lot of unorganized retail and local kirana that appears to be the winner in the current situation, paving way for the retail to become even more localized. We used to see retail in the gamut of organized and unorganized. Now it is becoming to be seen in the gamut of essential and non-essentials. So the unorganized and organized retail has taken a back seat. Here comes the new mantra of essentials and non-essentials. Here the non-essentials have taken a back seat, and essentials is very much in the forefront. So talking about a COVID-19 break, which is continuously evolving, nobody can predict with certainty the material impact of this crisis on this sector. So actually the impact and rebound will depend on the period of the crisis and the resulting extent of the behavior. When we talk about extent of the behavior change rather. So what is certain is that it will test all retailers. Minded testing of retailer in the coming times would be the foremost important aspect which will decide who stays and who doesn't. So certainly, as Indu rightfully mentioned, that the ones who will be financially strong, agile in response, and effective collaborators will emerge as winners. Again, in many segments, the crisis will drive consolidation, and the retail industry will have its own share of fallouts. Smaller, organized, or financially struggling retailers will have difficulty in surviving this period. It will take some time for them to come up, certainly because of the loans that they have taken, the EMIs that they have to pay. Uh, as in India, we all understand it is a rental, it is the rents that take away the major share of any retailer's earning. And few strong retailers with a very differentiated value proposition will emerge stronger. So, retailers will be forced to think what their core is as they enter areas never ventured before that keeps them stay afloat during the current crisis. So they will have to redesign their entire strategy. Now going forward, some of these peripheries may become their core. Certainly, when we talk about disruptions could be anything. Now we have COVID-19, which has changed the entire gamut of uh, functioning of the commercial market in itself, not just the retail, but the entire commercial market. So if you go back, the demonetization, COVID-19, H1N1, these were all the disruptive times. So the crisis certainly acts as another push for digital payments. In India, with public avoiding cash transaction out of fear, maybe even as for convenience. Uh, Above all, this will be a reminder to businesses that such an unprecedented crisis can happen anytime. And if businesses want to continue to serve their customers during a period of disruption, they will need to be proactive in their planning. Um, Finally, now is the time for retail players to get control. Um, it is just the time to get control of the current crisis, invest in the build out of a more resilient organization. So uh, there is a bit of a point that I'd like to share over here with my with the panelists and our participants that uh, about a week back, our finance minister has has certainly shared uh, some we should be saying that she has given out measures to help the ailing MSMEs that include the collateral-free loans up to 3 lakh crores. There is a say, in fact, most of the retailers are with the less than 100 crore turnover, but they're looking for an MSME tag, which is again something which is long pending, long overhaul. Talking about the MSME borrowers with about 25 crores outstanding and rupees 100 crore turnovers will be eligible for the emergency credits that line up into their businesses under the package, with loans having a 4-year tenure with a moratorium of about 12 months on the principal repayments. So there are things that we really need to appraise ourselves when it comes to the lot of benefits that are coming through from the government. But talking about retail, retailers with about 100 crores of revenue will not be able to avail themselves of the loan as they are not classified under MSMEs. So this is one area which we all, most of us in the retail business will have to really check out that what is that being into the retail business, running an entire economy, but we are still devoid of being under the larger umbrella of MSMEs. So this is where I believe, since I was going through the Retail Association of India, the largest body of more than about 13,000 organized retailers, uh, and roughly about 5 lakh of an outlet, have written to the MSME ministry requesting to include smaller retailers into the MSME fold. So we are hopeful, and let's see that if something could be done with this regard. So I hope we've had a great session this time. Over to the moderator, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. And now we will move on to the question and answer round. So we have already received one question from Mr. Abhay. So, sir,
Can you hear me?
yes, sir. So the question for you, sir, is that you mentioned about no trial rooms. So in e-commerce, how should the returnables be dealt with?
No, so e-commerce and no trial room. Trial room is meant for a physical store, and for e-commerce, anyway, there are no trial rooms. So returnable, I think, is a big challenge for the e-commerce space. But the way the physical stores are dealing with is that they are sort of sanitizing the clothes for 24 hours. They are putting them through a dry clean process and a desanitization process, and only then they are putting them back on the shelves. So perhaps the e-commerce will also have to adopt such kind of methods, unless your brand is strong and you can say, if you are very confident about your sizing and your apps are making sure that the customer is buying the correct size, then you can have a no return policy as well.
Thank you, sir. The next question we have is for Deepti ma'am. How would be the workforce management be in coming times?
Repeat the question.
How would be the workforce management be in the coming times?
See, workforce management would start right from hiring. That what is the hiring model we are using, how we are paying them, how we are engaging them, and our entire payroll model is going to first change. So what I believe in the coming times, when we would have flexibility models, we would have somewhere a combination of base pay plus some incentive pay, and incentive pays will be directly linked to store sales or traffics or whatever criteria as retailers we would want to fix, which are important to our business. So it will be certainly a combination of both, and we were going to see a lot of gig force coming in. So maybe somebody who is not really required full time to physically be present in the office, corporate office, or in the store or at the back office. We may want them to work remotely and pay them less. So we have to think of different scenarios like this, wherein it becomes optimally beneficial for both the sides. So that's how workforce management is going to be. And when we will have a combination of such different models and all sorts of people coming to the same workplace, we'll have to engage them differently. So we'll have a lot of interesting, transparent, clear systems, processes. And I would again say, as even Abhay and Indu mentioned, a lot of tech enablement would help here. So if people are working remotely, how would we see that what they have done, whatever goals they were supposed to complete, have they done or not? So a lot of performance tech features might come, which are not really big cost centers. So we get these features very easily. So some of these things will bring more agility into the entire system. We'll have agile work plans, we'll have agile milestones, completions, assessments, reviews, and that's how we'll go about HR management.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, due to the time constraint, I won't be able to take up any more questions. So I request all the participants, if you have any further queries, please email us at info@nimsme.org and visit our website www.nimsme.org for the information regarding the upcoming webinars. I would like to thank our speakers for their invaluable time and inputs. And now I request Ms. Jyoti Gupta to propose a vote of thanks. Ma'am, please.
Thank you. Let me take this opportunity to thank all three of our guests today. It has been a real good time seeing and talking about retail once over again, because this is one area which is very close to my heart. And certainly, I come from this background, and having collaborated with the MSME, I certainly see a lot of opportunity coming through way for small time retail. Will certainly bring in a lot of positivity, a lot of opportunity. Who comes with the challenge, the opportunities. So it was a nice session, and I hope we again come back for many more sessions. So let me thank once again, and good luck. Thank you so much.